Do a video today for my friend Jefferson Cruz. He requested a quick brake video, so I'm just going to show this as quickly as I can. Your brake components here, there's usually only 4 bolts. You're going to have 2 bolts for the caliper. That'll come off. And then you're going to have 2 bolts that hold your bracket on. Those will come off. Let me set this out of the way. And you can take your parts off, set them out of your way. All right, and this is pretty much the most important part of the brake job, so let's go to the bench. All right, so what you're gonna have to do is you'll pull your shims, or whatever you wanna call them, slides, whatever. And inside here, this is the important part where you have to clean and lubricate this part here. I'm not gonna go into the grinding right now, but you can take a die grinder, a wire brush. Sometimes this is too light, or even a file, and you can file this down. So when you're done filing that down, you're gonna apply a lubricant to this part here, and then you'll put your new shim on. Once your new shims are on, you're gonna lubricate this point too. So let's skip over to the one that's already done. This one's already done, as you can see. It's been lubricated here, and on the shim, this one's not done yet. So we'll get that taken care of. All right, this is another very important part here. These are your slide pins. They actually float inside here. This one's a little bit stiff, but we'll let it ride for now. The important part is to apply a little bit of lubrication to this, just a light amount, and then on this side here, you're gonna put a good amount here because that'll create a seal against the boot. And that'll stick in. All right. This one's already done. All right, so now your bracket's set up, it's clean, it's lubricated, and everything's ready to go. These will be your pads here. What you're gonna wanna do is you'll put just a little bit of lubricant on the pad too. This helps with wear and tear, and it keeps it floating inside the bracket. It'll look somewhat like that. There's a couple other things we can do, but we won't do that right now. One of the things I wanna show too that's actually pretty important that people skip is when you have a new rotor that you get from the parts store, you have to degrease it. So we're gonna get this rotor clean. I just spray it down with some degreaser and I clean the face of it. Gets the fingerprints off, and then these come with oil on them, so you gotta get that oil off. That's pretty much what it's gonna look like. It'll be clean. All right, and then we'll gotta go to the other side of the truck here. All right, so this has been prepped. I cleaned the surface here. This is a mating surface where the rotor is gonna go on. I clean that surface, and then we're gonna lubricate that as well. What I usually use here is a red grease, and it's in a spray, and I'll spray this down. And then the rotor will go on, just like that. And you're actually gonna wanna spray this down too. You don't really have to worry about the studs, but the mating surface there. Now here are your caliper. You'll have caliper pistons. These pistons will be out. You'll have to get a special tool to compress these pistons back in, and then you got to follow the manufacturer's spec and the guidelines on how to do that. So they're different on every model. This one I already have prepped and ready to go, so I can put this back together. But another thing I like to do with these is I'll spray the lube on this too here, and I will get it in there on the pistons, and then I'll actually put some on the caliper itself where it actually touches the pad. You can actually do a couple other things, and I'll show you that here in a minute. So let's get this bracket on. These pads will go in. Alright. Let me grab something real quick. I will be right back. Of course, I forgot something. Hey, shut up. I'm filming something. You can actually lube the face of these pads. It helps everything float. You don't have to go too crazy with this. This is just to prevent some corrosion and helps everything move. The important part of the brake job is to make sure these pads actually float real nice. If they're too stuck in there, they'll stick against the rotor and you'll have a problem. Same thing with these pins. You want to make sure your pins are moving correctly. There's no friction in there, because if these pins stick, the pads will stick against the rotor too and they'll wear prematurely. So you want to make sure all your parts are moving freely. I call it floating. Grab your caliper. I'll stick the caliper back on. If you look at some of these slide pins here, there's a flat edge, and that flat edge has to line up with the caliper correctly. If you have it spun, it won't bolt down correctly. So just make sure those are lined up right. It's different on different models, but it's just something small you got to watch out for. Got my gun for this. Now I got to go grab the gun to tighten this down. But actually, I could just finish now. I'll get these tightened down, but that's pretty much the gist of how to get this done. There's a lot of tricks, but basically clean and lubricate all your parts, install them, make sure your pads are free, make sure your caliper floats really nice, make sure your torque specs for your bolts are checked and done properly. You don't want to have those, because of the vibrations that are in here, you don't want to have those bolts come loose, so make sure you check that too. But in a nutshell, that's kind of a Cliff Notes version of how to get this done.